Travis, appreciate your time and coming up to or allowing me to come over and do a video with you.
Of course. It's my pleasure. Like I said this morning, when you reached out to me, you've been such a good friend for me these years. And even as we went our separate ways, just as life has taken us, with me moving and stuff around. So anytime I can help out.
Right on. I appreciate it. And speaking of that, we met through mutual friend Frank.
Yes, sir.
And he has a video or that he and I were in and a channel, and he goes by Frank Travels, and also just want to plug him real quick.
Okay, also, for sure.
Is the Declutter King, I believe, and has a brand called Go Thrive Abroad.
Awesome. Yeah, I've checked it out. It's a really cool channel. Frank is a really down-to-earth guy. I think everyone should check out the channel too. You can learn a lot about yourself too.
Right on. So with this channel, I've been talking a lot about the power of healthy habits, and a lot of times when people live outside of their normal environment, which we've been doing for a few years now,
yes, sir,
and visiting in different countries in Latin America, we pick up different healthy habits that may or may not exist in the United States. Most of them probably do, but for whatever reason, we don't tap into them. So it would be great to just talk about some of the things that perhaps you've started to do, and I can share some of the things that I've been doing as of late. I've been talking a lot about fasting. I'm not sure if you're into that, but could you shed some light on some of the things that you've picked up on since you've been living outside of the United States?
Of course. I think the biggest thing I can always talk about is forcing myself to learn something new. I think one of the most unhealthy habits we can have in the United States is we get very complacent. So we have our routine, working, and maybe we see our friends when we get the time. But when you're in an unfamiliar environment, the language is different, the culture is different, everything is different. Sometimes you want to go into turtle mode to where you protect yourself from being wrong or being uncomfortable. So over the past really year, I've started to do the reverse. And that has really, I've noticed it must be something scientific. So whoever's watching this video who's a lot smarter than me can put a name to it. But my learning in other areas have became easier for me because I'm forcing my brain to be uncomfortable and to learn new things. I think for such a long time in the United States, I had reached a point in my career and life to where, like I said, I just was comfortable and I never branched out to learn anything new. So one thing I do here a day is I try to push myself. We're here in beautiful Playa del Carmen, Mexico. They speak Spanish. And one of the things I try to do is I try to learn one new word in Spanish a day. And you would be shocked of how much it helps and how much it makes you feel more a part of their culture.
That's what's up. I feel like your Spanish is already good, bro. Like
it's pretty decent. It's pretty decent. My wife, I'm married. I'm happily married. My wife is Colombian, so she doesn't speak much English. So
congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Right
on. I always place it as I can communicate. I think there's a difference between fluency and just very good communication. I think that difference is, obviously we are native born in the United States. I'm a native English speaker. You can put me in any English speaking scenario and I will understand 100% of whatever they are saying or not saying, even because a part of language is nonverbal communication.
Right.
And that is what, I know it's a pretty high standard, but that's what I call fluency. Spanish, I can have pretty much any conversation, aside from politics, because I don't talk much politics anyways.
Okay.
But aside from politics and deep research science, I can have pretty much any conversation. Where I struggle is, again, being in some of those unorthodox scenarios, whether it be music I listen to or being in certain areas to where they don't speak as formally as we learn. So yeah, that's my level of Spanish. But I think outside of the mental aspect of the healthy habit, what I've also started to do, and it sounds so crazy, but it's so powerful, is going to the grocery store more than once a week.
Okay.
I think in the United States, we get so busy and it's so convenient, Costco or Walmart, we buy these things in bulk. But when we're doing that, we're never getting the fresh produce because our produce we're eating is always 2, 3, 4 days old. And if you just do a little bit of research about, how any living thing fermentates, as it fermentates, it loses not all of it, but it loses a big chunk of its nutrients. So the potatoes or the strawberries or the green beans that you bought on Sunday are healthiest to eat on Sunday or Monday, not a week after you've frozen them and then let them de-thaw. So that's another thing that by being able to work less due to the cost of living being lower, you get some of that time back in order to make those healthy habits. And I was also in a really bad habit in the United States where I didn't even go grocery shopping myself. I ordered it.
Right.
So now you're trusting someone in an entry-level position, and their job is important, but we've all been in an entry-level position.
Yeah.
And how much we all remember how enthusiastic we were about that job, maybe as a young teenager or a young adult. So you're trusting them to pick out the health, the greenest greens
Right.
for you. And definitely for someone who's slowly trying to get away from such a carnivorous diet, I look to my, greens for a lot of the nutrients that my body needs. And it's really critical to try to find those, organic, greenest greens, things like that. So those, I think, are the two biggest, healthiest habits that I've developed. But I think one thing that's important for your channel and everyone to know is it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
I've been living out of the country since pretty much the end of 2022. So we're coming on about 3 years now. And when you first move, you have to give yourself some grace because we are humans at the end of the day. And it's not easy for us to do something one way. When I moved, I was about 25. Do something for 25 years, and then because you moved, you start doing something. I always tell people that I'm not on a diet. This is just my lifestyle.
Right.
And you have to find a routine that makes it your lifestyle versus just a diet or I want to lose 5 pounds.
Right. You said a lot, and I don't know. I don't think you saw any of the videos that I posted on this channel.
I have not.
Okay.
I have not.
Okay, that's a good thing. And I only wanted to mention that because I think we talked maybe for 2 minutes about what this channel is about. And the two major habits that you said you've developed, one was, forcing yourself to speak a new Spanish word or learn a new Spanish word daily. And then the other is basically focusing on you yourself going to a grocery store and buying your own nutrition for yourself, for your own health. And then you also got into, evolving away from a kind of a carnivorous, I believe that's how it's carnivore diet.
I may not pronounce that right, but eating meat.
I'm just trying to pronounce it. But that's essentially exactly the same journey, maybe with a different path that I've been on too.
Awesome.
And what do you look for when you're going to the grocery store, specifically when you go multiple days a week? Because I do the same thing. And I know what I look for, but what are you looking for?
I think for me, it goes back to some of the basics. Like I said, the greenest greens. And then the hardest part for me recently has been able to try to find those proteins as I start to substitute away from, because right now I've been really strict on no red meat. And I've been doing really good with that. So I've cut it down to really just chicken and fish. So
no red meat.
No red meat, yes.
Chicken and fish.
Chicken and fish is what I've been able to be consistent on. And like I said, for me, that's the hardest thing to find in the grocery stores is replacing that protein. So a lot of peanut butter and apples, but it's hard with the peanut butter because you also have that trans fat. So I'm trying to find that balance. In the grocery store, what I like to do too is I do like to switch it up. So I pretty much have, I guess you could call them a meal plan for lack of better words, but I rotate them. so I never get too like tired of the same thing. So for example, if this week I'm going to do lentils and green beans, the next week I'll do something like broccoli and asparagus.
Okay.
To try to switch it up. And there's a really, if you ever come here to Playa del Carmen, there's a really good whole food, kind of whole foods, or not whole food, but wholesale / supermarket called DAT. I know you know what DAC is. And man, I don't know where they source from because I've asked a couple times, but I've never got a direct answer. I'm sure why.
Yeah.
But they do a great job at sourcing the vegetables that they have there, the produce, I'll say. So that's what I'm looking for. For me right now is trying to find that protein staple to make sure I'm still getting the nutrients my body needs while trying to phase away from.
So I've been doing a little research, not so much looking at actual documents, but ingesting or consuming content from doctors.
Right.
And what I'm learning is, because there's a whole community that are bodybuilders, athletes, people who physically have high performance expectations that are vegan or plant-based.
Right.
And what it sounds like, one of the areas you want to focus on is finding those plants that will give you the amino acids that will develop the protein that you're looking for.
Okay, wow.
So I know that chia seed is one of those plant-based products that can help you get the amino acids that you would need to develop the protein. And one of the, as I do more digging, I'm continuing to hear a constant theme. And one of the things that people are constantly saying is, if we look at almost every other animal, not all, but many other animals that are plant-based are muscular. Horses, for example, gorillas, cows. Of course, you got the lions and those other animals out there that are, you know, carnivores for real. But all those other animals still have muscle.
A lot of it, way more than we do.
Right. Now, I'm not talking about those that are like high performance racehorses that probably have some type of special meal plan or probably even steroids or whatever. But one of the things you might want to think about is kind of learning what the combination of foods are that would help you get the amino acids that we need. And there's so much that I need to learn, but I completely agree with you in that arena with finding the foods. And not, for me at least, I like fruit. So I've found that my body enjoys fruit more. Now, you were talking about vegetables. Are there any fruits that you tend to look for? Watermelon is one that I look for because I consume a lot of my water in the melons. Right. And I do drink water, but I try to drink more coconut water or spring water.
That's what I was going to allude to. So my two that I go to are bananas for the potassium. It helps me break down a lot of the lactic acid when I work out. And then I try to always start my day with living water. So coconut water in this case is what I found most consistent because I've been able to find that as I travel. Okay. Sometimes when you branch off into a very niche fruit or vegetable, it's hard to find it in surplus and in a good quality. So, but coconut water has been something I've pretty much been able to find anywhere. So those are the two that fruits that I like a lot.
So I know you've been a few places. In comparison, you were saying you look for coconut water. I haven't been to Colombia, and I don't know what grocery shopping is like there. I'm assuming it's going to be somewhat similar, but sometimes it could be completely different, you know, especially if you're in a smaller town, maybe. I just know from traveling to other countries that when you're in more of a very local area, there's maybe one or two places to buy fresh produce. There might be stores everywhere, but when you're talking like fresh produce where you can still see the fruit flies on them, I tend to look for that. Is it kind of the same? Is it as it is in Mexico?
Yes, to a certain extent, what you're alluding to in the bigger cities, of course, there's supermarkets. The biggest supermarket group in Colombia is a company called Éxito.
Okay.
They have a few different chains under them. La Carrulla is one of them, and that is what I would say is most similar to like a cheddarized selecto,
Okay.
or kind of maybe even a DAC. But in the smaller towns, for example, where my wife is from, Jericho, which is about 2.5, 3 hours south of Medellin, which is not the capital, but everyone kind of treats it like the capital. Um, like you said, there is one, and I wouldn't even call it a supermarket, but I'd call it a market that's in the town square. But all outside the town, you have individual vendors for your individual fruit. So you have your platano guy, you have your, you know,
Okay.
whatever the case may be, uvas,
You got your
grapes.
papaya guy, you got your
Exactly.
watermelon guy, you got your mango guy.
And I really like to see that because one, it allows them to make a living without the pressures of what supermarkets can do to small individual
Okay.
shops like that.
Yeah.
And then the second part about that is it's typically the best because that's all they focus on. They have a platano farm, they have, and then obviously in Colombia, coffee is really big. So a lot of the a finca is essentially like a ranch. That's the best translation in English. So you have tons of those that are solely dedicated to coffee, of course, because it's what they're probably most known for in Colombia. But like you said, papayas, plátanos, grapes, oranges are a kind of or it's not the orange that me and you recognize,
Okay.
but it has the same citrusy, kind of flavor and stuff.
It's like a green peel.
Exactly.
What
So
color is it inside? Is it
it's
orange or?
it's not a dark orange like where it's more of like a lighter orange.
Okay.
So that's one thing that I've learned in Colombia, but you do have to get outside of those city centers because I think that's another good point. No matter where I've been to obviously from the United States, but then all over South America and Mexico. I've been to Kenya as well.
Okay.
What I've learned about every major location I go to is a city is a city.
Right.
So if you're looking for a supermarket, you can find it. You shouldn't be looking for the supermarket because that's just not their business model to give you the best produce. Their business model is convenience. And they know that they can sacrifice costs by getting not whatever produce they can get their hands on, but definitely they're not focused like the Platano guy.
Is diminished.
Right.
In the supermarkets.
And then if you look at their logistics, the Platano guy and his cart, he literally takes them from his tree or from his stock. He puts them on the cart and he rolls it into town every morning. Right. He has the freshest product right there. The supermarket, it was maybe sourced from a farmer, 100 miles away, put on a truck, kept in a warehouse for 2 or 3 days, brought here, brought there, sat in the back of the supermarket. So that's one of the biggest things I've learned is having that time to go directly to the source. It not only does it help you be healthy, but then it goes back more to the mental aspect. You get to connect more. You get to learn more. Some things that you may have been doing that you did not know were offensive, or just off-putting to others, you'll learn that way.
Okay.
Because they start to open up to you more. I've seen that, like some of the advice that when you first move to the country, it's like the low level advice. I've noticed that a lot of either whether it be Mexicans, Colombians, Jamaicans, whoever, they almost kind of gatekeep the real advice or the best spots until they know that they can trust you. Until they know that they can trust you not to gentrify. And I hate using that word because that word is so abused in today's day. But there is, I call it accidental gentrification.
Okay.
To where you go into a place, you are completely ignorant, and I mean that with all respect.
Right.
Ignorance is the lack of knowledge of the prices or the customs of a place or an area. You offer what you think is a fair price, And there's a part to blame for the local, whatever country you're in, because they are actively taking advantage of you. That's what I call accidental gentrification, because it's not that you are attempting to price the locals out of that area. It's that you, unfortunately, don't have that level of knowledge of what is the actual fair price, what is the custom on how to do this business, and the local who has the opportunity is taking advantage of you. So it's kind of on two parts. So that's what I've learned is if you make a habit and they start to see your face and say, okay, this guy's serious about wanting to support my business, wanting to support, what I have going on,
Right.
then they tell you, how about you go try this place? Or how about you go try this place? And you're like, oh, that's funny. I've never heard of that place. I've lived
Okay.
here for 4 months. They're like, oh, yeah. They kind of just play it off. But
Yeah. It's difficult to know if a person in this particular region, if a person is a local, meaning an immigrant, I'm an immigrant, or if the person is a tourist. So the tourists, they're definitely going to just take the money
right,
and then move. I mean, it's, if you're thinking as a capitalist, if you can make 10%, 20, 50% more,
right,
then it makes sense to do it. But I understand. I definitely don't want to touch on gentrification because
of course.
it's a sticky topic, and I think that there's a lot of other underlying awareness that people who are really in the business of gentrifying, they know what's going on,
I agree.
and the goal is to purposefully price people out.
I agree.
So yeah, let's not get in that. But you mentioned you've been in other places in South America. I'm not
Yes.
sure what those places are. Can you name one or two?
Yeah.
Colombia, of course, is one.
Yep, that's where I met my beautiful wife. Lima, Peru.
Okay.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. One of the places in the world that has a subtropical kind of climate, to where that just means that it's like a balanced spring. One thing I like about Lima and I guess comparison versus Colombia is the pace of life is a little bit slower, believe it or not,
In comparison to
Colombia.
Okay.
And that could be just because I've spent majority of my time in some of the more populous areas in Colombia, like Medellin, for example.
Okay.
But I noticed in Peru, I think much more of their culture is intact without much outside influence. So the first thing I noticed was the street vendors. In Colombia, they see you, and me obviously being very American looking, they would immediately try to simulate and speak to me in English.
In Colombia, you look American?
Yeah.
Okay.
Believe it or not.
Is it because of what you wear?
It's mostly because of what I wear.
You as a man that's a person of color, that's bald headed with a beard.
I would say, so this is what they've told me. My beard is too long to be Colombian.
Okay.
If my beard was shorter, I'd have more of a chance of fitting in.
Okay.
But I'm glad you asked that question, because in Colombia, you will see people who look just like me, and they are 100% Colombian.
Right.
100% speak Spanish, and they have never left Colombia. So they're not American, none of like that. So as we all know, back a long time ago, Colombia, Cartagena, was actually a huge slave port. So our genes are prevalent in Colombia and in Venezuela as well. You will see a lot of Venezuelans and Colombians who look African American,
right,
but they are Colombian. But yeah, that's what they say always gives it away. They say how I dress, which, as you can see, I dress very relaxed, and my beard, the length of my beard is kind of an American style, they tell me.
Okay.
But I've been to Lima, to answer your question.
Right.
And I don't know if it was because of the time of the year I went, it was like March when I went, or if that's really how it is, but I feel like the pace of life is a lot slower.
Okay. So if you took Spanish seriously in high school and somehow you engaged outside of school in learning Spanish and became, for an American, fluent,
Yes.
do you think thriving in Colombia or anywhere in Latin America that is a Spanish-speaking country is possible for a person that grew up in the United States?
It is more than possible. If you dedicate yourself in this case, if you took Spanish seriously, or you just have a good understanding, right?
I need to take it
Yeah.
seriously. I know. I understand.
If you dedicate yourself within, I'd say 6 months, you will notice a complete difference. And what I always say by dedicating yourself is you have to go out there and speak. Um, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of self-help tools online like Duolingo and Rosetta Stone. SpanishGrammar.com is a really good one. But I've grown the most by speaking. There's just something about it that your Spanish improves. I mean, it just shoots through the roof. I don't know another way to really explain it. And that's what goes back to one of the habits I mentioned that when we first started is putting myself in a position to learn a new word.
Yeah.
And it could be something as simple as I'm in a grocery store and I see a fruit or a product that I don't know what it is or what it's called. And you can simply say, qué pena, which is like, excuse me, or you can say disculpa or permisión, algo así, something like that.
Okay.
¿Qué es? ¿Cómo se llama? And the person will just tell you, oh, this is, whatever.
Manzana.
Exactly. And typically, they'll have more questions for you. And that's how it always gets started. Something as simple as, hey, what is this? How do you, what's this called? Because then they're obviously going to say, okay, this person is learning Spanish. And one thing that I've learned about Spanish speakers all around the world is if you are trying to learn Spanish, they are willing to help you. Right. They are willing to help you practice. They get excited about it even.
I think you got to get out of the touristy areas though, because in the touristy areas, they not try. They just trying to. I don't want to look at you for too much longer. So,
I agree.
So tell me in English.
Yeah. And it's hard here because it's such. Playa del Carmen is such a beautiful town. It's grown a lot in the past couple of years. So it's hard to justify not living here if you like the beach and, you want to be geographically close to the United States for business and family. But on the same coin, like you're saying, it is a very tourist zone with Cancun to the north and Tulum to the south. Other cities like Mexico City, where I've lived, Puebla, where I've also lived, are in the middle of the country. You'll hear much more Spanish.
Okay, right on.
And I also think you get a peek into a lot of the industries that, we don't think about here in Playa because we see the tourist industry, of course, dominates the economy here. But Mexico City, I like to joke and call it the capital of the world. So it has every industry you can imagine. And actually one of the major financial centers of the entire world.
Okay.
So it's really cool to see that side of, the Mexican way of life.
Right. It's really Mexico.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I have visited other cities in Mexico and I've had the opportunity to see a lot of the landscape and I can definitely tell the difference. I know that the Riviera Maya, of course, is in Mexico, but there's so many transplants from all over the world. There's Russian, there's Cuban, there's Argentinian, there's German, there's Italian. There's a lot of influence here. And then when you go to the more pure Mexican cities, then you can really see the culture. Like, for example, being in Oaxaca, even though there's a lot of people from throughout the world in Oaxaca City specifically,
right.
The culture of Mexico was much more rich, especially if you were there during Dia de los Muertos.
Ah, yeah.
That region just, even though it's the celebration of the transition of people leaving Earth and, celebrating the Day of the Dead, the city comes to life.
It does.
Remembering their loved ones. And it's like, wow, the entire idea and thought process that I think the American culture adopted kind of ended up as Halloween.
Right.
But the process of honoring the dead is a multi-day event.
Yes.
And it's not just the dress up in a costume and, hand out gifts or food or candy.
And that's what I think is just prevalent in the culture of the United States. A lot of things are commercialized.
Right.
And there are a lot of good things about that type of culture as far as productivity, business, oversight. A lot of those industries thrive in the United States because of the type of the culture. But I feel as if you get to a certain point in life to where your body and your soul wants more.
Right.
And it's really hard to find that in the United States. It's not impossible.
It's dope that you found it at this space in your life.
I'm just fortunate. I really am. I can't take much of the credit. I've paid my dues, of course, but I've had really good mentors. I think that is what I will credit a lot of it to. Is really good mentors to push me. For example, I was in the army and I had a sergeant who's just basically, you can think of that as someone that's in charge of you. And he was preparing to get out of the military. And he was going to retire after 20 years, so he knew he was going to get a paycheck and be able to live comfortably. And he was honestly the first person who gave me the idea of living outside the United States. And this was back when I was like 18 years old.
Sure.
And he's going on and on about it and all the research because he had actually lived in Europe while being stationed in the military. So that gave him the opportunity to go out and travel in his free time and see, like, wow, the roads are good, the schools are good, there's supermarkets, there's gyms, there's things to do, there's a lot of the things that I'm accustomed to, but there's also something more. So to your point about Dia de los Muertos, I think you can kind of see the fork in the road, which, you know, which way the culture of the United States took that opportunity or that seed,
Right.
and then which way here in Mexico they took that seed. And I think it just goes back to the capitalist mindset and the over commercialization of things. As I mentioned, for some things it is good, and for some people it is good. I have learned not to tell people what's going to be best for them and what they want to do in life. What I like to do is just share my experience. And then from that information, I hope people can take it and then decide, okay, this is what I think I would like more.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I was speaking about something in that same lane on another video. The healthy habits that are best for you are what's best for you.
Wow.
You know, and then the healthy habits that are best for me are what's best for me. But the whole idea, the whole goal is to start to stack healthy habits so that you can reap the benefits from having a healthy lifestyle. And for me, I had to start controlling my blood pressure. And maybe blood pressure isn't a challenge for you. Maybe it's something else. Or maybe
Right.
it's nothing. You know, maybe it's just maintaining your quality of life,
Right.
your standard. You know, it doesn't have to be preventing a risk all the time, but my standard of living is this.
Right.
And I can achieve it with less stress here. You
I
know,
agree.
oh, and by the way, I have someone who I met and we're on the same page, and everything, you know, continues to build from there. So I'm just agreeing with what you're saying. You know, you don't have to necessarily tell someone what to do, and once you have the information, such as when your sergeant presented a thought
Right.
to you, it's like, wow, you know, I had some time to think about it, and the more I think about it, I'm forcing myself to be here, and I know that I like being somewhere else.
I think that's very true, and it's why what you're doing is so powerful, because you are bringing to maybe some of the people who are not able, at least right now, in the position to travel and go see for themselves. You're bringing those experiences to them in high definition. And I have to say that it's good that they can hear those experiences from people that look like them. Because a lot of the times, I remember when I was growing up, there's sometimes you would see things and hear about things, but then you would kind of default and say, well, I'm not ever going to be able to do that. And I've heard so many other of our brothers and sisters want to do things in life, but just automatically assume. I used to be a mortgage loan officer, and the amount of people that when I first met them were really almost confident that they were not able to buy a home, but they had been renting for 5 or 10 years, and In some cases, renting is a lot harder than buying a home, depending on the down payment assistance program and some of the other things that come into play. But they never thought about purchasing a home. So I really like what you and Frank and others like you two are doing, is you're bringing those experiences, the real world experiences, not paid or sponsored. It's just raw, what we've been through, so people can learn. And that's one of the coolest things about technology that we have today.
Bro, I appreciate that. And I think that's a perfect place to close. If you would like, or if you could you share what your top 2 healthy habits are?
Yeah.
And then share them in Spanish, and then we'll close it out.
Yeah, so what I've, over the past few years, my top 2 healthy habits is I try to force myself to go learn something new every day, which for me lately it's been a new word in Spanish. That really helps me grow in other areas. I'm a student in school, and I also do have a full-time job, so I found that my learning and those areas have increased. And then 2, I'm also trying to make it a firm habit, no exceptions, to go to the grocery store, shop for myself multiple times a week to find the best produce. En español, como
Sí,
pide mi hermano
por favor. Gracias.
Karim, pues yo he empezado a hacer 2 cosas nuevas para crecer mi salud. Uno es para comprar por mí mismo. Entonces yo quiero ir por el supermercado, o en este caso DAC, 2 o 3 veces por la semana, y yo estoy buscando por las verduras más ricas, las más que tiene verde. Y el segundo es que yo quiero aprender algo nuevo. En este caso es una palabra en español nuevo cada día. Claro, yo tengo la oportunidad para practicar con mi esposa que no habla inglés todos los días, pero aparte de eso, es muy fácil, mis hermanos, para aprender una palabra en español cada día. Y eso es.
Gracias, bro.
Gracias.
All right.